assembling this thing actually went together really well. I was actually really impressed with the machining of the parts. It all fit together really well. I had zero issues. There was one like questionable little part where you're like tightening up some grub screws, but aside from that, it all assembled really, really well. I was actually really impressed with the quality of the build. So as I was saying, I've got a laser engraver to unbox, so we're going to unbox that tonight. What I'm hoping is tonight, within a reasonable amount of time, that I can get this thing unboxed and start laser engraving something, because they said that there was going to be material in the box, and that we can give that away as well. So they sent me two boxes. They sent me a little box and they sent me a big giant box. And the little box apparently is like what they call their offline controller, which looks just to be a box with a cable, which is packed in there kind of tight. See if I can get this stuff out here. It's an HDMI to HDMI. Oh, this is the little screen. Oh, they sent me the screen for it. Okay, sweet. Okay, well, let me give you some background on this. So this company reached out to me, and I haven't done like any major technology reviews in a long time. But they looked over my blog and they looked at stuff that I was posting on Twitter, and they're like, "Hey, we saw that you do reviews. Do you want to do a review of this laser engraver?" And I'm like, "You can." Well, they said, "Well, you can do a review if you can do an unboxing, and then ship it back to us." And I said, "Well, you know, what would it take to keep it?" And they said, "Well, if you want to do like a bunch of videos, like over a period of time," I'm like, "I'll do a bunch of videos over a period of time because that'll give me opportunity to give stuff away." And so they're letting me keep it. So tonight is the unboxing. They originally wanted me to do the unboxing live on YouTube. And I said, "Well, I don't stream on YouTube. I stream on Twitch and I'll put the video on YouTube afterwards." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine." So let's go over to the screen. There we go. And go over to my browser. There it is. So this is the company, Atezr. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. Atezr. But this is the company, and basically they reached out and said, "Hey, we got this kit. It's called the P5. There it is, the P5 Pioneer P5. So it's a low power laser engraver. And what stood out to me, so like I was going to try and bug Focus about getting one of their laser engravers, but one thing that really stood out to me about this one is the laser is actually pretty enclosed in here, and so it doesn't scatter a ton of light. Now, for the purpose of tonight, I'm going to have it on the workbench here just while we quickly engrave something, but for long-term use, it's actually going to be on a workbench over on the other side of the workshop where it's shielded, where I can't even see it. So I don't have to worry about laser light like getting in my eyes. But while it's over here, I'll be wearing their protective glasses and stuff like that to go with it. But this is the model that they sent, and then the thing that I just unboxed, this little piece here, is actually a little screen that's actually going to plug into this front panel here apparently. So I know nothing about what this little screen is capable of. I don't know if it's a little touch screen or what, but let's jump in on this box and we'll kind of pick this apart. So as I mentioned, when I'm standing up here like unboxing it and talking, let me know in chat if you cannot hear me. So let's switch over to this screen here. So here's my workbench. I've got two different camera views. I've got this camera view and I've got this camera view. And so you'll be able to kind of see what I got going on as I unbox this thing. So let me know in chat if you have a hard time hearing me, and I'll try moving the microphone around so that you can see me a little better. I've got a different screen over here that I can kind of pay attention to chat while we're working on stuff here. Which product are we reviewing? Yeah, let me drop a link in chat for you real quick. So this is the 5-watt laser engraver link. If you want to go check that out. And we'll get this thing all opened up here and we'll see what we got in the box. All right, so first impressions, we got a user manual, an installation manual, and they're pretty thick actually. Got 120 pages on the user guide. The installation manual, it's multiple languages. It's about 16 or 17 pages long. And it's covering a lot of things like assembly guide and warranty and stuff. So we'll be referring to that one kind of as we go. And then this is actually taped down. So it's some kind of metal sheet. It's called a giveaway cutting mat. When cutting, please put this mat under the object to prevent damage to the tabletop. Please tear off the surface protective film before use. So yeah, we'll take this plastic off, but basically if you're cutting directly through anything, so yeah, basically if we're actually going to be cutting through any of the material, we'll be putting this down so that it's going to cut onto this instead. What worries me about this is metal. And I would think that if you're cutting through something, then the laser hitting the metal is going to reflect back up and scatter all over the place. But we'll hang on to that. And we'll see what we got going on here. All right, so we got a whole bunch of stuff here. We got a USB cable. It's the old USB Type A, so with a square knob on it. So we're dealing with that kind of plug. And I've got a USB hub over here that I can plug it into. We've got a little bag of tools, a lot of Allen keys, got some zip ties, tiny little bag of material. We got little wood chips, we got a piece of acrylic, we got some sticky bits, we got different screws and bolts and stuff like that. And then in here, this looks like a power supply of some kind, so standard sort of computer type plug that you would plug in the wall, and then a little round plug to go off of that. And then we got all the bits and pieces here, so I'm going to move these onto a different area just while I get this unpacked. But very sturdy engineering. I really like the look of this. It's kind of a, gosh, how would you even describe it? It's a dark silver kind of anodized aluminum. It's a really, really nice color. Really well engineered. It's got some belts in here. The belts are a little loose, but this whole mechanism just slides. So this is the actual mechanism that's going to move. And it's just got the same kinds of little bearing wheels in there that that you would normally see on like a Creality printer. So cool. All right, what else we got in here? We got all kinds of pieces on in here. All right, this piece is a lot heavier because this one's got one of the motors on it. Yep, and it's got like just little stop buttons on it. It's also got an adjustment on here as well. This is where the laser attachment actually connects to, and then this allows you to tighten the laser, and you can move the laser up and down based on the thickness of the material or how you want to focus the laser. So put that over to the side. So yeah, feel free to ask questions as I unpack this thing. I'm happy to answer what little I know about it, but if you've got questions about it or anything that you want to see a little bit closer on the camera, let me know. I'm pretty sure these are just legs to sort of prop it up a little taller on your workbench, depending on the kind of material that you're going to put under it that you actually want to do engraving or cutting on. Apparently this thing will cut up to like 15 millimeters thick. So I don't think I'm going to try and cut through anything tonight. I think we're just going to try and engrave some things tonight. But if you have questions, if you want me to answer anything as I go, let me know. All right, so another. Oh, I've actually got to take. All right, I got to take more of this thing apart here to get other pieces out. All right, so we got their logo on here. Again, I don't know whether they pronounce it Atezr, I don't know. But this is just a piece, and there's like a metal rod just kind of floating in here. Looks like this one's going to be a little more involved from a build point of view. So this has all of your wiring. Looks like there's a little Wi-Fi antenna in here. It's a little bit loose, but it's a directional microphone from the looks of it. And then we've got just the standard sort of plugs like you would see on a 3D printer. Now, one thing that I have seen in these videos is that this just kind of flops around behind the thing as it moves around. So I'm already starting to think about, like, can I get one of those little keychain extender things that you'd use for your keys that some people do in the top of a Voron, for example, to keep the PTFE tube out of the way? Could I do something similar where I attach it up on the ceiling somehow that it'll keep these wires out of the way as it's moving around? So I had to rebuild my whole workshop down here anyway. And now I've got this big workbench right next to my streaming PC. So I'm like, well, this would be a good spot to do the unboxing. There's a big sticker next to the emergency stop button. It says, please cut the cable ties before use. So they got a zip tie around it so you can't actually hit it. But there is like a big emergency stop button that if something goes wrong. Now on the front of it here, what's interesting is this is the front of the unit. And when you look at pictures of this thing online, this is the front of the laser engraver, or what you would perceive to be the front. And they've got the USB plug, but they've got the power plug facing up. And that's really odd to me. I would have expected it to be like in the side pointing out or something like that, but they've got it plugging into the top, which if you look at the plug, it means it's going to be, you know, kind of sticking out of the top like this, out of the top. So that feels like a weird kind of engineering thing to me. I would have expected it to be off the side, but that's okay. And then there's also a spot here for an SD card, and there's also a reset button that you'd need like a paper clip or something in there, and then power button. All right, so let's move this off to the side. So those are the four major pieces of the frame, but there's going to be more pieces in here yet. So looks like this is actually the laser unit itself. I'm really excited to dig in on this one. So again, the nice thing about this is it's got the enclosure here. Let me switch over to this camera and see if I can show this a little bit better on this camera. Move this out of the way here. And so it's actually got this little enclosure around the bottom of the laser. So the laser's up inside here, but it's got the little window here that's actually going to protect, you know, from seeing, you know, or from the laser light skipping around. And so ideally, this thing's going to be really, really close to the material or right on top of the material, so that it doesn't scatter out from the sides, where other lasers, like that laser is just kind of like sticking out wherever, and you've got some amount of distance in here, and that's where that laser light's going to scatter. This thing apparently is meant to be like really, really close to your material, so the only laser light that you see is actually coming through this little window, which is that laser screening type of material that the laser light, like you'll be able to see that the laser's on, but you're not going to have to worry about it getting in your eyeball, supposedly. So I'm pretty excited about that. That was the only reason that I really agreed to review this unit, because that seemed like a pretty good safety feature. All right, looks like we've got one more piece of frame here. Oh yeah, that makes sense. So 4 pieces plus a gantry arm for the actual laser. So this is the other missing piece of the actual frame. And I think that's everything. All right, so let's look at this installation manual. So it says it's 16 pages. Starts off with a caution. High intensity laser beams generate high temperatures and a lot of heat. When installing the equipment, make sure the workplace must be clean and there are no flammable or explosive items. I mean, I'm going to be building this on a wooden countertop, so hopefully that's going to be all right. So it's got the different parts labeled A1, A2, B1, and B2. So let me go track those down and get this thing oriented here on the workbench. So this diagram here is kind of giving me a bit of a start of like which one is labeled which. So let me go grab those pieces and get them kind of laid out here on the bench. All right, so this first one here with all the controls, this looks like this is B1. So it looks like this one is B2. And then we've got that metal rod, which is the optical axis apparently. And then we got A1 and A2. How do I know which is which though? Because they both kind of look identical. Well, they look identical. One's got a motor and one doesn't. But the pictures don't tell you which is which. This one doesn't have a motor on the picture, neither does this one. It's just the little gantry piece here. neither one shows you that it has the motor. It's just the y-axis left and right side rails, but it doesn't say which one to put where or which side is up. There are little cutouts on the bottom of this right here. There's a bit of a groove here, which I imagine those feet would fit into. So I'm going to guess that that side goes down. Actually, no, according to the picture, that side goes up. Okay, so if that side goes up and it goes like that, then this has to be this side. It would have been nice for them to put a sticker or something on this to say this is A1 or A2. That would have been really helpful to kind of get started here. So if that's the case... Wait, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. So the orientation of this is definitely the bottom, this is definitely the top, but it doesn't tell you which of these pieces is actually A or B, or 1 or 2. I'm going to move this one up here, because maybe the motors are supposed to be near all of these wires. So we're gonna go for this so far. So keeping in mind that my workbench here is 26 inches deep, this thing's already pushing the limit of this workbench as far as the size of this thing. I'm gonna lay these out first and then worry about the laser module. Okay, so it does tell me here the one with the motor is A1. So this is A1, this is A2, and then B1 and B2. So A1 with the motor does go close to the control box. So I've got these two pieces in the right spot. And then A2 is going to be over here. That's in the right orientation. This one looks like that's going to be in the right orientation. Okay, so it looks like there's a handful of bolts. There's 3 bolts on both ends of the B assembly that attach into the A assembly. So right now I make it look like it's long this way. It's actually going to be long this way. So it's actually, the pieces are going to attach this way instead. And then there are several, there are 3 bolts here that go in this end. Can't really easily see it here. You can kind of see there's 2 bolts here and there's 1 bolt here. And that's going to connect onto the end of this, where there's little cutouts into the aluminum extrusion. There's 1 down here at the bottom, and there's 2 up here on the top. A little harder to see because of the lighting in here. Get a slightly better angle. So there's 2 holes up here, and there's 1 hole in the extrusion down here as well. So that's where those bolts are going to go. All right, so let's get some tools going here. All right, so they've got different, so they've got like bags, which they've labeled really well, like step 1, step 2, step 3, which I love. I love that they do that. It's kind of like the Lego bags of like unpacking a Lego kit, and you get told like this is bag 1. So this has M4x12s. There's 16 pieces, which is more than what we initially needed. We need 12 of these to get started. So there's 4 more of them that are going to bolt something else in. So we'll just unpack these, and I need to go find... Well, I think that there's a hex key in here, but I'm going to go grab my hex driver. It'll be a little faster for me. So M4, that's going to be probably a 2.5 millimeter. Yep. This actually goes together really nicely. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but once you get them fitted in together, wow, the bolts just went straight into place. So they've done a really good job machining these pieces, at least so far. Now I'm not going to tighten this all the way down because we're going to have to square this thing up and make sure that it's square all the way around. So I'm just going to put the screws in just what I would consider finger tight to get started. So yeah, we're definitely going to need definitely need some room on the workbench here as we're moving this thing around. So I'm going to do the other side of this. So let me switch over to this camera, and we'll do these other 3 on this end. All right, looks like these last 4 bolts actually go on the top here. You think these top bolts will auto square the frame? Yeah, I hope so, because this is an awfully big frame to try to square up. But like I said, they machined it really, really nicely. So far this is going together really, really easily. All right, install the belt tension adjustment nut. Okay. M525, there's 2 pieces. M5, M5. I don't see any M525s. So I put in all 16 pieces of the M4x12s. It now says there should be 2 pieces of M5x25s, and I don't see those. What is the burn size? I believe on this one it's 16 inches square. Once it all gets installed. Now 16 inches is going to be, not quite the full inner size of the frame, but it's going to come in a little bit. I did see one person that was doing a review of the same unit. I don't think it was the P5. I think it was a stronger laser version of the unit, and they actually burned a grid of like 1-inch squares. So yeah. It said to use M5x25s, but they didn't include any in the bag. So that's a problem. I got M558s, I got M514s, I got M56, and I've got like a little wipe cloth, but no M5x25 for the belt tension. So I'm probably going to have to go pilfer some of those parts. Then they want M5x60s. But, well, I mean, they sent M5x58s for step 3. So this one is labeled step 2. Step 2, they say to use M525s, but the step 2 bag says M5x14, not by 25. So I'm going to try them anyway. Hopefully they're going to be long enough. But we'll see. What about the bag to my right? So the bag to my right, this is just extra tools, like the wrench and the Allen keys, and then like cutting material. So it's shipped with a couple of pieces, like a couple of tiny pieces of wood, and then 1 piece of acrylic. So that's all that's in that box. And then there's like some small keychain size cutouts. Like they're literally cut out like keychains with a little hole in them right up here. And it's just like plastic coated acrylic. And that's all the material they sent. So if we can get this up and running, I'll engrave something onto one of these and we'll give that away tonight. So hopefully these bolts are going to be the right size. These don't fit in here at all because I'm trying to put them in the wrong side apparently. Let me turn this thing around. Alright, so I got to move up a layer here. Oh, they want a 3mm on that one. So each of these side gantries has a belt in here. Let me switch over to this camera view so you can see maybe a little better. So there's belts in here that this runs back and forth on. And these bolts that I'm putting in here are the tensioners for these belts, just to tighten them up, because they come in really, really loose right now. And this will help to tension those up. They don't really say, how much to tighten it though. So I'm not going to go too overboard, but I'm going to tighten it up to where I at least feel comfortable with it. This side is a lot more loose than this side. This side's really, really tight. So I'm going to try backing this one off a little. Doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference, to be honest. I think if they had given me 25mm screws, it actually would have gone all the way to the actual belt itself and rub against the belt. So it might be something that they've changed in the manual. So what's the wattage on this one? They call it a P5, so I think it's between a 5 and 7 watt laser. Not super strong, but what I really liked about it was just that it's got this little sort of screen on here, so it's meant to be like really close to whatever you're actually engraving, like literally right on top of what you're engraving. So as long as what you're engraving doesn't have a lot of bumps, or you'll have to figure out whatever your high spot is, because you wouldn't want this thing to like trip over something that was too tall. But hopefully that way less laser light is going to scatter out from underneath it. In theory, I think that was their plan. But that you'd still be able to see it through the little window, so you can see it's actually like doing its thing. All right, step 3, install the X-axis assembly. So I got to turn this thing around again. And it's surprisingly lightweight. Like, that's not very heavy. That's probably only 4 or 5 pounds, if that. So this thing's pretty lightweight so far. Recommended to push the Y-axis slide all the way to the top to keep it horizontal, and then install the X-axis assembly. Okay, well, which way do you want me to slide it? Like, all the way which way? This way? Maybe? This one goes farther, though. I get what they're saying, though. Like, you need this, you know, exactly perpendicular to the frame. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time kind of lining things up. So let's do this. I'm going to kind of eyeball this a little bit here. And here. So within a few millimeters, I'll be squared up here. All right, so now the next part. So this looks like it goes on this way. So this is the mount that the laser actually goes on. And then there's an adjustment knob on here that will allow you to slide the laser up and down. All right, so this then looks like it bolts all the way through the length of this into these bolts here on each side. That would explain why I need 58mm bolts. And the manual says 60mm, so they've probably made some corrections to this as they've gone. It's got a great big scratch on the top. Brand new thing, and they sent me a scratched unit. What do you want for free? So for transparency, this was an evaluation unit. They asked me to do a review, and they said if I wanted to do a bunch of review videos that I could keep it. Good luck with the engraver. Thanks for dropping by, Curtin Bird. Hope to pop on back later. Yeah, so I'll be probably at this for a little while tonight, and then I stream all about career stuff on Sundays. So feel free to drop by the stream on Sunday mornings. I stream all about career advice and resume reviews and all kind of stuff on Sundays, so feel free to drop back. All right, so for some reason this bolt didn't want to go all the way through. At this point, I'm sure any metal wooden pieces are very cheap, easy to get regardless of location. Finishing is the next step. The expensive part for any of these are the electronics and getting someone to provide software for it. Yeah, I feel you on that one. You have the FE20, the 20 watt, but I'm saving up for a 40 watt CO2. Wow. So why doesn't this want to go all the way through? It does go all the way through. Just not line up well. Oh, there it goes. So one thing I'm noticing about how these bolts are going in is there's a lot of empty space inside of this piece, and so when you drop that bolt in, it's not being guided all the way down. So you kind of have to guess at, how you're actually lining it up to actually get it in the part underneath, which is kind of a downside to this. All right, so that's in, that's bolted down. Install the bottom support feet. So I think the better instruction would have been to tell me to do that before I put the X-axis gantry on here, because now when I flip it upside down, it's gonna rock. It's not gonna be flat on the desk. So I think that would have been a better instruction. Let me move that to about the midpoint so I can flip this thing over here. All right, step 4. All right, so these feet have a little bit of rubber on them here, which is kind of nice as far as like not scuffing up your desk. So these are going to go on this way, it looks like. So the long edge is going to be up against here, and the short edge is going to go along the y-axis. But yeah, so far top marks on the machining. Like I haven't had any problems getting any of these screws in, other than lining them up for the for that X-axis gantry. It's a little tricky doing that, but so far everything's gone together really, really easily on this. I'm pretty impressed by that, having put together printers and other equipment over the years. This is actually going together really nicely. Pretty happy with this so far. I have the LightBurn software installed, but I don't have the actual like the LightBurn software kind of forces you to set up a laser engraver like immediately when you install it. And if you don't set one up, it actually exits the software. So you can't even really play with the software until you set up a laser engraver. And I didn't know what to pick because the brand of the company doesn't show up in the list. So my suspicion is that somewhere in the installation instructions, it's going to give us a hint about how to actually get into the software and get this working. So let me pick this up and spin it around here. LightBurn, yeah, or whatever it's called. I thought it was called LightBurn, isn't it? So LightBurn or LightBurner, LightBurn. Sorry, what did I call it? Did I call it something else? DG, I'm doing really, really well. I kind of switched over my Thursday stream to be kind of maker time. Still happy to take interview prep questions and career advice questions and things like that as we go. But things like resume reviews and so on, doing those on Sundays now instead. And had a company reach out and ask if I would do an unboxing and an assembly video of their laser engraver, and I said, sure, be happy to. So they sent it, and then we came to an agreement on doing a bunch of videos, and then I get to keep the thing. Is anybody in chat familiar with using LightBurn? I might want to get some pro tips from anybody in chat if you've played around with a laser engraver. If you've got any tips on setting up LightBurn, or what kinds of images make for good images for doing things like laser engraving. If you could feel free to drop some hints in chat on anything that might be like a gotcha. All right, one screw is a little bit tight. Out of all those screws so far, that one was a little tight going in right there. But other than that, everything lined up perfectly. The screws all went in perfectly. So A+ on the machining job on this so far. All right, next up, install the polished rod. All right, so that's going to go in the end with the control box, which is at that end. So I got to pick this thing up and turn it around again. I got this steel rod wrapped in plastic. Oh, this plastic is really stuck on here. I don't know very much about laser engravers, but I do know that you've got things like how strong to make the laser and how like the duration of time to actually send the light and things like that. So I just know LightBurn gets a lot of love, and their logo's a dragon, so I approve. Yeah, I mean, you know me, I like my dragons. All right, so it looks like this rod goes in this way, but it's not very long. So where does this actually line up? So there's two. And then you got to lock it down. So basically there's some grub screws that are going to lock this little rod down. And it looks like it's attaching. Okay, I got you. All right. I wish I had a better camera angle for this. Let me spin this around so you can see what I see, hopefully. Switch over to this camera. So this is the rod that I just installed here. So it kind of goes through this side all the way down, and then there's two two things here into the motor, and the rod's fitting tightly into that, and then there's some screws in here to tighten, and then there's a screw over on this side. So very similar to what you would see in a 3D printer. There's like there are two grub screws actually that'll fit into this gear here on this side. And that's going to basically, when the motor moves the rod, it's going to move both sides of this thing. Because the motor is attached to the belt on this side, and then it's going to use this rod to move the belt on this side at the same time. All right, so let me go find those grub screws. That's going to be what I presume to be step 5, but I don't see a bag labeled step 5. There's a spare parts package with some tiny little screws. There's like a little M3x8 and some M4x3. The M4x3 look like the little grub screws, but there's no other little bag labeled step 5. So that would be nice from a consistency point of view. If you're going to label things with steps, then label one with step 5. Would I say single Z? Single Z motor, yeah. Although in this case it's X, it's only X and Y. There is no Z. So this is effectively X and this is Y. And so yeah, it's single X, I guess is what I would call this. All right, well, let me see what I actually need in here for these screws. It also doesn't tell you in the manual which ones to use here. So on all of the other steps in here, it says like, use this screw of this size and use this Allen key or that Allen key. On this one, it's just like, lock it down, use the Allen key in the picture, and tells you which way to turn it. Makes it look like the grub screws are already installed. But I don't see, there are no grub screws installed here to hold that thing in, to hold the rod on this side. And this thing can spin on its own without turning this gear. There is one screw on this side that you can tighten. But it's not a 3mm. It is a 2.5mm screw. There's a second hole here for another screw, and that looks like where the other M3.8 is going to fit. The instructions don't say to put another M3.8 in there, though. And all they say is to tighten up to tighten it up on the other side, but they don't say what to actually use. It just says lock the polished rod, but they don't tell you what to use. The M3.8 does fit on this side, though. Yeah, this side is the other M3.8 for sure. But they don't tell you what to put on this side. So I don't know whether to try these little grub screws. It's going to be even smaller than this, though. Figure out what I'm actually going to need here. So this looks like a 2mm connection here. Let's see if that's going to fit in there. I'm not super confident that that's what I need there. So it definitely feels like they've missed an instruction in there for sure, because then we're getting into cable ties, how to tighten everything down, how to adjust the belt tension, and that's all they tell you. So I'm going to presume that these tiny little grub screws are going in that side. So I'll add this other one in and hope for the best. Nope. Oh, it does not want to go in there. Right, I'm going to turn this thing around so I can see that a little better. No, that does not want to go in there at all. And this grub screw, I thought I tightened in as far as it would go, but it's not going down nearly far enough to actually touch that rod. So I don't think that's where those grub screws belong. They kind of fit in there, but not all the way. So I'm kind of concerned about that. Let me take this other M8 out, and I'm going to try it again on that other side. Over here. Sorry that the camera angle is not ideal. Yeah, this does not appear to be an M3 opening in there. It's too big. The M38 doesn't even want to fit in there in that threading. So I'm not sure what they expect to tighten over here, but there's no bolt in there already to tighten. Or is there? Oh, you know what there is? Okay, there is a grub screw. It's just really buried in there, which you would expect, but it's also really, really hard to see. All right, well, that would explain why the other one didn't go in anywhere. All right. Oh, there's actually one in each hole in there. So how about that? Okay, so those are about as tight as I can make them right now. Okay. So that was not an oversight on their part. These are just extra grub screws for next time if you need them. And an extra M38 for that other side in case you need it. So they just needed to be tightened down. What was already there just needed to be tightened. What I was missing was this silver screw right here on this side. This black screw came installed, but the silver screw did not. And so this rod was not tight inside this assembly. And so the motor was turning. Sometimes the rod would turn, sometimes it wouldn't. And then over here on this side, we had to make sure that there's two little grub screws holding in that gear. There's one, there's the second one. You gotta make sure those things are really tight. That solved the problem for me, and our skew is now totally gone. All right, let's move on in the instruction manual here. What's next? So next, we installed the polished rod. Now we're gonna mount the laser. So this doesn't go quite as smoothly on that belt. It actually feels like it jumps and it skips quite a lot, so hopefully that's not going to be an issue later. All right, so installing the laser. This is going to go on here. There's like a little butterfly groove for this to slide down. And then, again, you can adjust the height of the actual laser. There's a bolt on this side over here that you use, so as you're positioning this, you can move the laser up and down, and then so like we can move it down fairly low, and then this screw just tightens it in place, and then it won't move up and down any longer. All right, so that's all installed. Now we're going to do the cable ties. So This is something that I didn't see in a previous YouTube video about these setups. So it looks like they've taken some feedback from their user base, and they've got these little grooved plastic pieces that just go on with sticky tape, and it looks like the cables are just going to run through here. So they're recommending that you put a few of these on to keep these cables out of the way. So that's nice to see. So they're calling for 3 of them on this side of the X gantry. So they don't really say where. Other than just all along that X gantry. So looks like put 3 of them on that side. So we'll just pop 3 of them on here. And get that out of the way. And they say to put it on the smooth side. So if we turn this around here this way, we can see that there's a smooth part and then like grooves in here, and they're saying just attach 3 of these on these smooth parts. I'm going to do one down at the, is it that end? No, the end, this end. Is that right? Just looking at the orientation of the manual. Yeah, okay. Yep. So we want one here. And then we'll do one a little ways down. Assembling a laser engraver. Yep. Can it engrave any material? That I don't know. They sent it with some wood and some acrylic. And apparently it'll do, I think it'll do, they said it would cut up to a certain amount of depth of material. I'm probably not going to test the cutter tonight, but we'll definitely play with the engraver a little bit. I'm probably just going to do wood and plastic though. Similar to 3D printing, you know, just because my printer can do lots of advanced materials. I typically only print PLA and PETG. I do occasional ASA. Okay, so it looks like they actually want it on the underside of the y-axis here as well. They want 3 more. So they give you 7, and they tell you to use 6 of them. So they give you 1 extra. Do I need a fume extractor? That would probably be a really, really, really good idea, yes. I don't know that I would use this in an enclosed space, because anytime you're burning material, I think you've got potential for problems. I had a wood burning kit when I was a kid, and I really liked the smell of like wood burning. So I don't think I'd have a problem with like a little bit of like wood etching, but if I was etching plastics, I would definitely want some fume extraction for sure. All right, so we got those on there, and now we install the cables. Now we got to try to figure out which is which. All right, so they give you a pretty good diagram here of which wire goes to which point. Sorry, the camera's not great at focusing. Here, I'm going to use order. I'm doing this off camera. Actually, let me switch over to this view. You might be able to see a little bit of what I got going on here. So I'm just trying to run the cable through the cable management bits that I put on here. So we've got the cable ties here, and I'm just trying to feed the wiring in on those. So yeah, I think some kind of fume extraction would actually be a really good idea with this. Especially if you're doing lots of acrylic. Like I said, I don't mind the smell of like etching wood, but I think if I was doing acrylic all day, every day, that would probably give me a headache. I don't think I'd enjoy that very much. All right, now as far as getting the other gantry on here, so the tricky thing about the cable management with this is where do you feed the wires to get them out of the way, but where everything is still gonna like line up properly. Because it looks like this is connected here. That goes up that far, so that only needs to reach to there. So that's the maximum that needs to go, and then we've got stop sensor here. So they've got really nice clicky stop sensors for X and Y. And then this last one connects into the actual laser from the looks of it. And that just goes in the top here. So very plug and play so far. It was tricky getting the plug into the X motor. That was a little harder than I think it needed to be. I think potentially attaching that wire before you assemble the entire frame could be helpful, but I can also see why that could be problematic. All right, so we'll get the wiring in here. So there's no way I'm going to reach all the way over to this last set of cable ties, though. So that's really the maximum length I need there. Actually, yep, that'll work just fine. Pull that into here, but when this comes all the way back, that's going to be a problem. It's going to get stuck on here. So I need to move at least this one to a better position, because at most you need to set it by here, which they do tell you in the picture. They tell you to put this one close to this groove here, and I put it too far this way. So let me see if I can pull that off. Yep, pops right off. All right, so let's set that closer to here. I'm a little curious whether that's actually going to hit that stop button enough, because when I push this all the way down, I don't hear the button click. So I'll be a little bit curious how well that actually connects here when we get this thing powered up. So what do we got next? So we got all our wires attached. And that's it, mission completed. Congratulations. Now it's telling us how to adjust the belt tension for tightening and loosening, as well as the belt tension for moving the laser. Okay, so that bolt is over here on this end for the x-axis. So I'm going to loosen that one up a little bit because that one did feel tight. Like I said, this whole thing is pretty lightweight. I mean, this whole mechanism is probably less than 10 pounds so far. It's surprisingly light. All right, we'll see what that does as far as tension goes. All right, what do we got? So we got that, and now we got our power, we got our emergency button, on, off, reset. That's it. Release the laser module, lower the focus. Focus setting lever to determine the position, lock the laser module, close the focal length setting lever. Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't even notice this about this before. So if we pull this back, there's actually a little lever right here next to the laser itself that actually you pull down, and that's actually a guide for how far away to put the laser up against it. So we were saying earlier, like, this thing should be right up against your material. There's actually this little silver lever that you saw me pull down here actually acts as a guide for where this thing needs to hit. And it's going to give us about 2 millimeters of space between the laser and the actual material. So it's not going to rest right up against the bottom of this thing. It's going to come down about 2 millimeters from the bottom of that. That's actually a really nice feature. And that's it. That's all they tell you in the instruction manual. They don't even tell you how to plug it in or how to get it set up in the software in here. It's just warranty material, and then it goes into alternate language. So that's all we got here. So let's get this thing kind of positioned around where I want it to be. And then we'll see whether the software is actually going to pick this thing up. So I'm going to turn it this way so the laser is pointing away from me. And again, for the size of this thing, this is like exactly the width of my workbench. Like this thing's right up against the edges of my workbench here. If it were any longer this way, this thing would not fit well on my workbench. But we're going to go with this. So we'll get this. It said to use this as a, if we were going to cut material, it said to put this underneath it. I think I'm going to put it underneath the laser anyway, even if we're just etching something. All right, so there's, I mean, this thing's pretty bent up and banged up, but it's basically just sheet metal. And it's got some pretty heavy scratches and stuff in it. It's got one side that's got plastic on it. It's got like a plastic rubbery sort of side, and the other side's just sheet metal. I'm going to put the sheet metal side down so it doesn't reflect back up at us. And then we'll see if we can get this thing plugged in and powered up. Now the cable's not very long, and my USB hub is over on this end of the desk, but the plug end of it's like way down here. So I might need to go get a USB extension cable because this thing is not going to be long enough to fit. So let me see if I can find another extension cord for the USB. Otherwise, I got to turn it around the other way. I might be able to pull the hub down the other way a little bit. All right, so we got that plugged in over USB. See if that camera's going to work for me if we come back over here. Yep, there we go. All right, so it's plugged in over USB. Let's get the power plugged in. And we'll see whether there's any kind of startup sequence on this thing. I gotta cut the there's a zip tie on the emergency power here. I just gotta cut that off. All right. Interesting. Okay, so the emergency stop is a push down, but then you have to twist it to actually turn it back off, like to actually turn the emergency stop off. The other thing that I'm not crazy about, you can't really see it very well on that camera, but where the Wi-Fi antenna is, there's not a lot of tension on that screw, and it's falling down and hitting that that polished rod in here. So I might need to see if I can get in here and like tighten up the bolt that holds that antenna out of the way. Otherwise that antenna is going to be falling against that screw a bunch. I might just put a little bit of tape or something under here just to hold that antenna out of the way, that it's not going to hit the that bar. All right. All right, so we powered it on. The computer blinked that it recognized some new device. I'm going to stick a piece of wood under here just for a moment. See if we can lower this thing all the way down to that piece of wood. And sure enough, we can. But I'm probably going to bring it up just a tiny bit because we don't want it to drag that piece of wood as it moves. Nope, it's going to drag. This screen here. All right, so there's the browser that we were in. Let's see, was it this one? Yeah, here we go. All right, so this view I've got, so that's just my tablet with the chat window so I could see what was going on. So This way we'll be able to kind of see what's going on. And once I actually print, I'll be putting these on, so it'll kind of protect my peripheral vision from anything that may deflect. But let's pull up that software first. So let me go into OBS and add that as a source. We'll do window capture for LightBurn. Do that one. So the first window, so this is coming up in separate windows, so we'll have to kind of tinker with that here a little bit. But the first thing that LightBurn is coming up with is like, hey, what device do you want to use? There is a little dialog box, and unfortunately you can't see it on the window that I'm showing here. But I can go in and I can create something manually, or I can say find my laser. I'm going to do find my laser, and it comes up and says be sure that your device is connected via USB, and click next. So I'm going to do that, and it's going to scan through my USB devices to see if it recognizes a laser engraver. All right, so it found a GRBL on COM6, figured out everything it needed. It's a G-code based thing over serial USB. I'm going to add that device. What do I want to call it? I'm going to call it the AZTER, or ATEZR. And this was the P5. It's asking for the dimensions of the work area, so I need to go look that up. So what were the dimensions of this? 430 by 430. So 430 by 430. Where's the origin? The origin is going to be front left. And it's asking, do I want to auto home the laser on startup? So we'll say sure. And it says it's done. So now I say okay. And here's our work area. So this is the front of the control here where the control box is. And it looked like it automatically homed everything for us. All right, so that worked. But now I need to figure out exactly where that little wood piece is relative to that position, because I don't really want to etch anything in my nice workbench yet. Although that could be kind of fun, like etch something custom into my workbench. That'd be kind of dope. But I think for now we'll not burn my desk. So we're going to need to figure out exactly where these origins are. And this is where I'm at a complete loss because I've never used this software and it's not very intuitive around, you know, drag and drop this image and put it here and this is exactly how to line things up. Like there's nothing like that on here. So if anybody in chat has any ideas about how to use this kind of software, I would really appreciate hearing from you. So if anybody's familiar with this software, let me know. So we did the home. Is there a way to say move to a position? There's a console, it looks like. We can type in commands. You can save commands as macros. Optimize the cutting path, show the last position, optimize your settings. But what does all this even mean? I mean, are we just supposed to guess where this stuff is? I realized one of the things that we didn't set up was the little external screen, and it's got a little speaker on here. It's got a little HDMI port. So maybe we'll try plugging that in a little later. Also, could use some suggestions on what we should engrave on one of these little pieces of wood. So these little pieces of wood are 3.5 by 2 inches, so business card size. If we do this in millimeters, we're looking at 89 millimeters by 54 millimeters, so 89 by 54. So if anybody's got ideas of something I can engrave on a piece of wood board, let me know. Yeah, I mean, this software is, I mean, it looks like it's got tools for like draw a rectangle and things like that, but they don't give you a lot of like getting started, like, hey, go find an image and pull in an image and lay it down here. This is the kind of image that you want, or here's how to get started. Here's how to know like where to put the stuff underneath the laser. Like there's none of that. looks like you're supposed to drag an image over first. So I guess I'm just going to try and drag over one of the files that are on the drive. So we're just going to do a carved butterfly. I'm just going to try dragging that over here. Okay, that thing's enormous. There's no way that's going to fit on that keychain. Or the business card size of thing. How do I shrink that? Let's see. Zoom all the way out and zoom in down on the bottom corner, then I can kind of see it. Okay. So we've got it down to where it's less than 50 tall. We know that that thing is 80 wide. So if I kind of bring this out in the middle here to 50 by 80, or what was it? I think it was 89 by 54. Yeah, so 89 by 54. I'm presuming that the laser is at 0, 0. Like the laser is actually going to be pointing at 0, 0. So I guess that's where you want to turn the laser on briefly so that you can see where it is. But how do I do that? Because I can't add that custom button. It's got macros up here for custom commands, but it doesn't tell you what to type in for those custom commands. Like you're expected to know all this stuff. Like there's no easy getting started kind of like, here's a common thing you probably want to do. Trace the cut boundary with the laser head with the beam disabled. Speed is taken from the move panel. Oh, so this should actually show us where the frame is. Let's see what this is going to do to move around. So let's go back over to this screen. And let's go over to here so we can actually watch this thing move. I'm going to set this thing to just do like a frame trace so we can actually see where this thing moves around. Oh, it's framing. This is where the thing is actually going to be. I think it's centered-ish. I don't know. I'm just going to try it. I'm going to go for it. Pop on my stylish 80-year-old man, 80-year-old Florida man sunglasses here. Let's try it out, shall we? Well, this is doing exactly nothing to that piece of wood right now. Like, literally nothing is happening. It's definitely going over, and, like, you can see the light, and you can see the thing, like, pulsing around and moving around. It's not etching a thing into this wood, though. Like, nothing at all. So, what I'm thinking is I'm going to stop this from running. It says it's 15% done already. I'm going to go ahead and stop this from running. It's rehoming. And I'm going to change the setting on here to either, well, I'm going to tell it to go slower and maybe more power. It's making a very, very, very light burn on the wood. And it smells quite lovely. If you like the smell of wood etching, it actually smells pretty nice. So yeah, you can see the thing kind of like pulsing away. I don't know whether I can go back into this mode. You'll see it a little larger here. See if I can go over to this. I don't know whether this camera will show you anything differently. You don't really see anything there. Well, you can kind of see that it's actually etched some stuff on the wood. I don't know if I want to get in there with like a pen or anything, but you can actually see down at the bottom of it, it's actually etching some lines in there. But again, we also had to shrink this thing down pretty significantly as well, in order to even fit on this little piece of wood. And even with these glasses on, it's kind of hard on the eyeballs to look right at the light. So I'm going to not watch the thing work. The horizontal line across the bottom is really, really strong compared to everything else that it's doing. So I've got a feeling that we're going to need to change some of those settings even more to kind of tinker with this. And this is all part of our learning curve. But hey, we got the thing built. We got it assembled. In 2 hours, we're etching for the first time. I wish I could actually zoom these cameras. I could drop the camera down a little bit so that you can actually see a little bit better. I guess now that it's assembled, you don't need the top-down view. That's actually etching decently well. I think it didn't etch the top line because the wood was too low. So again, having some sort of reference of this is where everything begins, and have like some sort of guide. Like I'm almost thinking like a little L-shaped guide that you can like tuck it down into. Like you know how on like photo scanners and document scanners, it has like the glass that you lay it down on, but then it's got like a raised ridge on two corners so that you slide it in and it's exactly square where it needs to go. I'm thinking probably design something similar to that where you know that's your zero origin point. But it would have to be somehow connected to the frame itself. That way you know that that's always where that's going to begin. Because there's no way for the laser to like home in and say, oh, this is where you want me to start. Like there's no camera or any intelligence on this to kind of like hover over it and go, oh, this is what this is the material that you wanted me to actually etch. But slowing it down to 2,000 millimeters a second, bumping the power from 25 to 40%, we're definitely getting some etching on the material. Let me go back over to this other window here. Let's go back over to here. You should actually see. You can see that it's etching in there. I'm actually going to lower that camera down a little bit so you can see it better. There you go. I mean, that's about as close as I can get the camera to it right now. But we can definitely see it's etching out that butterfly. And again, I think the wood panel was just a little bit too low from where I thought the origin was happening. So that's the one downside that I see to this. There's no good way right now to sort of line this up. So let's have a look. Smells toasty. All right. Well, now the laser's off, I can get rid of my 70-year-old Florida man sunglasses. There's the etch job. I'll kind of hold it away from the lights because the light really washes it out. So it was too low, like relative to where the laser was expecting this bottom corner to be. You can also see it wasn't perfectly square because it's a little bit closer to the edge here than it was over here. But I mean, for the amount of detail on this, it actually came out decent. You wanted it's pretty, it looks old fashioned. I mean, exclamation point giveaway. We're gonna give something away. We're gonna try this again, and we're gonna try and etch something different. So this was like a really big image that we had to scale down in order to fit on this little card, and so this was just a first attempt of can we burn something. I'm also curious about etching onto paper and things like that, like what that would actually look like. Obviously, a lot less power, maybe faster speed with less power, because there were different settings in the book and in that PDF file that they sent about etching onto different kinds of material. But this thing will cut up to 3 millimeters of plywood, 6 millimeters of Paulownia wood, 5 millimeters of pine, 2 millimeters of bamboo, 8 millimeters of acrylic, 2 millimeters of artificial leather. And then for the engraving, it basically gives you lots of different speeds and powers and so on for different kinds of material, like different kinds of paper, and different kinds of acrylic and woods and artificial beef bone. Okay. One thing that I didn't notice on here, so they have ceramic tile. Well, they have cobblestone. But one thing that you see a lot online are the little stone like coasters that you would put a drink on, and see people like etching into those. But I don't see a setting on here for those. I may order a set of those just to tinker with that a little bit. Engrave a Postman logo. I would love to engrave a Postman logo, because putting it on YouTube, even though I'm not monetizing it, I am getting the engraver for free by doing YouTube videos, and they could see that as like making profit off of their image. So while it's going to be part of this VOD, I'll be stripping all that stuff out for the actual unboxing. So when I splice this video together to do the actual unboxing, I'll make sure that all that stuff is taken out. But yeah, I would love to do like the Postman logos and all that kind of stuff. I think it'd be fun to do some of that. So I've got to travel next week, so I'm kind of thinking like, you know, as much as I'm a little nervous about the idea, I kind of want to like make some little 3D prints and like etch into those. But I don't know whether etching into PLA plastic is a great idea, or if it's going to completely obliterate the plastic, or just burn the plastic, or if it'll actually etch something into the plastic. Yeah, I imagine it would melt, but it could look kind of cool. So I'm kind of curious, like if it melts, is it going to like bubble up to the point where it's going to catch the laser on the way back? That's mostly what I'm curious about. But it would be really quick and simple to just 3D print, you know, little flat plates of things. Like one of the things that I've been doing on the Voron is, you know, you get these little calibration plates or something. Like I could just try etching on the back of one of those just to see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Make sure you have something for the fumes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm in a pretty, you know, open workspace area now, so I'm not too concerned about PLA fumes, because I print with PLA all the time. But I wouldn't etch onto like ABS or anything like that. Whoa, dudes there. It'd be interesting to see if you could weld plastic with the engraver. That would be interesting, actually. You would have to know exactly where the pieces of plastic meet, or have a way that they overlap with like, you know, like a 0.1 layer or something like over top of the other one, and like melt, like engrave through that to like see if that would actually bond it. That would be interesting to kind of test out, like how well that would actually work. So on the laser module itself, and the nice thing about this is it's got this little window in here, so there's not a lot of like light scattering all over the place. Is it has this little bar that comes down so that when you're actually etching on material, you wouldn't have to worry about this thing actually like sitting on the material. Because originally I thought, you know, this thing would actually sit like right really, really close to the material. But then they're like, no, we've actually got this little bar so you know exactly like where to put things. But do I put it like right up against that bar? I mean, obviously that's crooked, but like, do I set it so that the bar is actually touching the material? Is that like the optimal place of focusing that laser? Because I think I had two pieces of this wood together, and I think that that might have been why I had to do like several passes of this. Like that butterfly didn't etch very dark, and I'm wondering if it was because the laser is actually too far away. I use a metal mesh under the laser, and those work great. Trello board is very full. Yeah, for sure. I got lots of Lego kits on there that I want to build. I thought about doing the Lego on stream, and I don't know that Lego is going to be a big enough draw to really do. So, Father Funk, what you're saying is like where this little leg comes down, like I should actually be using that as a point of like how far down to drop the material. Because my worry is this thing's kind of heavy. This thing's probably like a pound just for the laser. If I put it down where this is actually on the material, it's actually kind of heavy. I'm still going to need a way of like lifting it up slightly. So I'm trying to figure out like, do I put like a couple of sheets of paper in there, or like a business card, or, you know, do like like we do with 3D printers and put like a zip tie under there just to give it a tiny bit more space so that this thing's not actually dragging on there? Or once that's calibrated, do I flip that piece back up? Is that what I do? Like maybe I just flip that piece back up once it's calibrated to the right height. I guess that's where I need a little bit of help on that one. In your case, you have a 1/4 inch acrylic to measure the distance from the laser to the material. Okay. So 1/4 inch. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, this thing is literally like millimeters off the top of that thing. Like 1, 2, it's literally 3 millimeters away. So like where that little pin stands up is 3 millimeters from the edge of this to the top of that pin. That's 3 millimeters. And then I had two pieces of this. Well, I had a piece of the 2 millimeter wood and then the actual wood that I was engraving on. So if that's enough, and I just set it down to touch that, and then once I'm ready to etch, I pull that thing out of the way, and that's exactly where it needs to be, then I'll just do that. With the laser engraver, I've wanted to get one for a while, couldn't really justify the cost, and then this company hit me up and they're like, do you want to review one of these? And I'm like, yeah, all right. And they're like, yeah, just do an unboxing. And I'm like, okay, well, how long can I hang on to it? Can I like engrave a bunch of stuff and then send it back? And they're like, yeah, I'll send it back like right away. And so then I kind of went back and forth with them. I'm like, what would it take to actually keep it? And they're like, well, we would want like a series of videos. So I'm like, all right, I'll give you a series of videos. You're going to let me keep the thing. So just for transparency, they're letting me keep the laser engraver. I just have to do like 3 videos a month for a couple of months, and which is fine because every time I'm coming in and I'm going to learn about something, I'm going to learn in public. You know, I'll have this thing. It probably won't be on this desk. I'm going to put it on a desk over there, but I'll put cameras on it over there. I just need to figure out how can I send G code to it across the room. It has a little antenna on it, like it's got Wi-Fi built in. I need to figure out like how do I send something over Wi-Fi. It's also got an SD port in it, so I'd love to like figure out how to like put something on a SD card and like just take that over and print off of that. It did come with a little screen, and so I want to like get that installed next, and see like maybe that's got a way to, you know, set up the Wi-Fi or something on there. So that I don't need to be plugged into USB. If it has to work over USB, then I'll just bring it back over here and I'll like print stuff while I'm learning the software, and, you know, do that as a set of tutorial videos on like, this is how I'm learning how to use the software. Here's what I find is working or not working. So what you're saying, like, where does the hobby pay for itself? I mean, it's going to take a while for this hobby to pay for itself, with the amount of equipment that I got. That's kind of my goal, is that as I'm learning how to do these things, I'm going to give this stuff away. And once I learn how to do it well, then I'll start selling them. So it's not like I'm going to start making money tomorrow on this stuff. It's going to take a while to get there. So yeah, just tinkering with all kinds of stuff on that. So yeah, definitely stick around for the journey. I mean, come by anytime. So Thursday is my maker night. That's the night when I'm going to be doing stuff like this. Sunday is like my career advice and interview prep, where I just focus just on the interview stuff. Help people with like resume reviews and getting jobs and stuff like that.